Good morning. That's the first time I've said that in 12 years. I'm glad you all saw the schedule change and could make it. We're trying to respond to your needs, and we're having this in the morning and a luncheon for the first time ever. So welcome, as you can see, to the 30th annual. It says luncheon, but we're taking license there. The 30th annual event of the Benjamin Ide Wheeler Society. I'm Kevin Crilly, Executive Director of Gift Planning. I wanted to introduce my colleagues, who some of you have just spoken with or dealt with by email, but they're in the house, so I just wanted them to raise their hands. Randy Silverman over here, and Rebecca DeKalb, Melanie Kyle-Holtz, who's over on this side. It's a little dark. Samantha Merritt. Where are you, Samantha? I can't even see with these lights on. And she's up in the back. And Kimberly Vaughter, and who's also up in the back, and Damon Paez, who are up in the back. Those are the fundraisers who you have dealt with. A couple things. If there's space in the middle and you could move in a little so folks who are late arriving can get on the ends, that would be really helpful if any of you could move in a little bit. And if you've got questions for the Chancellor, just write them out and pass them to the end of the aisles. Melanie and Rebecca will be collecting them. So as you can see, we have a slightly different setup this year than usual years. And so what we're going to do is the Chancellor is going to have a brief address, and then after that, she really wanted to answer your questions. So I'm really delighted to introduce Chancellor Carol Christ. She, 14 days ago, assumed her role as the 11th Chancellor of UC Berkeley. And I've dealt with her on some interactions as when she was interim executive vice chancellor and provost, and I found her to be clear-thinking, analytical, and very decisive. So you will also notice that there's something completely different about this chancellor compared to the other chancellors I introduced. And we've already heard from lots of donors how excited they are that for the first time UC Berkeley has a woman chancellor, but she will tell you. And so, without further ado, I give you the 11th Chancellor of UC Berkeley, Carol Christ.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's so wonderful to see you here. I'm so delighted to see so many familiar faces and also unfamiliar faces. I look forward to getting to know you. This is day 14, as Kevin said, not too much time to get in trouble yet. And I want to welcome you this morning and thank you. Thank you for your support of the campus, for your loyalty to the campus, for your love of the campus. It's a love I share. It's why I decided to come out of retirement to take on this responsibility. In the past several weeks, I've been thinking a lot about journeys. I remember vividly the first journey I made to California to take up my faculty position here as a professor of English. I was a young, freshly minted PhD. I had just turned in my dissertation the week before. I drove across the country with a friend. It was the first time I'd been west of the Mississippi. Indeed, it was the first time I'd been west of Philadelphia. In those first few months of teaching here, and my first classes, I still remember them so well, were freshman composition and the last quarter of our required survey of British literature. Like many of you, I fell in love with Berkeley. First, I loved the students. So different from the relatively privileged students that I taught at Yale as a TA. Everyone had a different story of how they came to Berkeley. They were diverse in their life experiences and aspirations. They were smart, they were quirky, and they were filled with wonder and curiosity. I fell in love with the intellectual excitement of Berkeley. No matter what the subject, there is some faculty member at Berkeley who not only knows about it, but is expanding our understanding of it. And I loved the fact that Berkeley felt like a place where history was happening. Political history, scientific history, intellectual history. Berkeley is a place that matters. Some say it matters more than any university in the world. Of course, there are many kinds of journeys. There are physical journeys, like that first drive across the country that I took, but there are journeys through time as well. The distance from my house in Berkeley to the campus is less than a mile. The distance from the provost's office, where I worked for the last year, and the chancellor's office is less than 50 feet. But the experiential journey, the internal journey to becoming chancellor feels much more substantial than that. Berkeley has made me who I am. It has shaped me intellectually, and it has enabled me to become the leader that I am. My very first administrative position was as the campus's Title IX compliance officer and faculty assistant for the status of women. That's a very long title. It wouldn't fit very well on a card. I learned many things from my work in that job, but perhaps most consequential for the future was that I learned I enjoyed administration, that I found deeply gratifying working with others to achieve important institutional goals and changes. I then held a series of leadership positions. I was chair of my department, dean of humanities, dean and provost of the College of Letters and Science, then executive, a vice chancellor and provost. And I've worked with 4 of Berkeley's 5 last chancellors. Mike Heyman, who I'm sure many of you remember, Changlin Tien. I know many of you remember Changlin, Bob Berdahl, and Nick Dirks. And I've learned from each of them. I've been thinking a lot about each of them in the last several weeks and months. I have a lot of history here. But I've also learned being away from Berkeley. As many of you know, I was president of Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts for 11 years. The 2 institutions, in some sense, could not be more different. West Coast, East Coast, public, private, urban, rural, research university, liberal arts college, co-ed, all women. I learned an enormous amount in my time at Smith, how to create and sustain cohesive community, best practices in undergraduate education, sustainable financial models in private institutions, fundraising, how boards of trustees operate. But perhaps most important, my experience at Smith enabled me to see Berkeley with a broader perspective that has deepened in my year as the interim executive vice chancellor and provost. I'd like now to share my vision for the campus. I said before that Berkeley is arguably the most significant institution, university, in the world. Let me explain. We have 2 lodestars, our guiding principles: excellence and access. Berkeley is as much about the transfer student from Fremont or Hayward or Arcata, whose parents have never been to college, as it is about its Nobel Prize winners. Indeed, it's that combination that defines us. We have more students on Pell Grants at Berkeley than all the Ivy League universities combined. We score #1, some faculty of ours just recently did this study, among all the American universities in the percentage of our graduates whose families had incomes in the bottom 5th of the US income distribution and who reached the top 1% in their careers. We are an engine of social mobility. Berkeley's about to celebrate its 150th anniversary next year in 2018. Berkeley, or the University of California, as it was first called, was the first university to face west, toward the Pacific, toward Asia. Indeed, one of the first philanthropic gifts to the campus was a chair in Oriental languages and literature. And it's always had the pioneering spirit of those who pushed to the country's western edge. Berkeley's founders imagined a university that combined the best of the traditions and aspirations of Eastern and European universities with the mission of the land-grant college. And here I'm going to quote from the Morrill Act, the Land-Grant College Act, to teach such branches of learning as are related to agriculture and the mechanic arts in such manner as the legislatures of the states may respectively prescribe in order to promote the liberal and practical education of the industrial classes in the several pursuits and professions of life. I think those are extraordinary words because you see right there the combination of the more traditionally academic disciplines with the more practical ones, the agricultural and mechanical arts, and the mission of access. I wish I had a crystal ball that would show me what the next 150 years would bring. But let me tell you, as I embark on my term as chancellor, what I hope to achieve. I have 5 goals. The first is building community. The past several years have been difficult ones for the campus. We faced, indeed we face, financial challenges, a leadership crisis, highly public sexual harassment cases, violence around the issue of free speech. They've taken their toll on the community in a lack of trust and flagging morale. We need to rebuild our sense of community, a challenge in a place as urban, as large, and as diffuse as Berkeley. In part, this is a matter of tone and shoe leather. In part, it's creating public events and occasions in which we can feel together. This is our Berkeley. I will spend more time with the city of Berkeley and the government in Sacramento. They are our most important partners. And in building community, we have to make sure it's inclusive, that every group feels welcomed and valued. My second goal is enhancing the undergraduate experience. Too often, Berkeley seems like a place that students survive. We want every student to thrive, to have the best opportunity for the education to which he or she aspires. We offer many of the high-impact educational experiences on this campus that are the stock and trade of teaching-focused colleges and universities, experiences like education abroad, independent research with faculty members, internships. But too often they're unsystematic and uncoordinated and left to the enterprising student to discover. We want each student here to get the benefit of attending a leading research university, not just through the prestige of his or her diploma that he or she hangs on the wall, but participating in discovery experiences like the ones you saw in the video that are the very nature of the research that we do here. I want more of our students to study abroad, more to do internships. Critical to our enhancing the undergraduate experience is expanding student housing. We house the lowest percentage of undergraduate students by far than any other undergraduate UC campus. We house only 22% of our undergraduates and only 9% of our graduate students. In a housing market as expensive and impacted as the Bay Area, this creates a challenge for students that diminishes the quality of their experience. Too often, they're living in housing that is too crowded, too many students to a room, too expensive, too far away. It makes them distracted from their studies by basic needs. We must change this situation. Because the campus does not own much unoccupied land, and because some potential development sites are politically fraught, just think People's Park, and because some potential, and we need to find creative partnerships with the private sector to increase our housing capacity. My third goal, and this is very much the subject of the video you saw, is enabling faculty to do the most important, the most critical research for the public good. We have such an extraordinary faculty, and I've learned in all my years of higher education leadership that what you have to do is just get the obstacles out of their way and let them do their work. We have faculty working on every problem fundamental to humankind and to the planet. Advances in medical technology, understanding how the human mind works, our energy infrastructure, wealth inequality, designing new kinds of cities, climate change, the list goes on and on. This research is one of the most profound and significant public benefits that the University of California offers. We need to create the conditions that enable faculty to do their best work and make the collective investments in areas with the greatest societal impact. My fourth goal is making major progress on diversity in each of our campus populations, undergraduate students, graduate students, faculty, and staff. We can and should be more diverse. And demographics are only one dimension of the challenge. They will matter less if we cannot build a greater understanding of diversity and a more inclusive climate. My final goal is developing a new financial model for the campus. This is much more than eliminating our deficit, although I'd like to assure you that we're making really good progress on that front. We ended fiscal year 2016, that was a year ago this past June, with a deficit of $150 million. We will end 2018 with a deficit of $56 million. Yeah, I'm really proud of that work. My goal all along has been to address our financial challenges through increasing and diversifying revenue sources. There's a line from a speech that I heard about a year ago that I often quote to audiences: "You can't cut your way to heaven, but you can spend your way to hell." I'm really interested in reducing the amount that we have to cut by building our revenues. And I'm proud to say that over half of the goal of our fiscal year 18 reductions we've met through revenue enhancements. This is what I mean by developing a new financial model. We used to be generously funded by the state. We now need to increase and diversify our revenue while never losing the centrality of our public mission. Finally, there will be two issues that I will be addressing this year that I haven't chosen, but are very much in front of us: the deficit in intercollegiate athletics and the controversy over free speech. Many of you know that athletics has had a significant deficit. Actually, it's been for decades. When I was working for Chang Lin, athletics had a significant deficit. I think it's corrosive for any department to operate for a long period of years with a significant deficit. It doesn't build a culture of fiscal responsibility. We'll be making some difficult choices as we develop a sustainable financial model for athletics. And now free speech. Berkeley, as you know, is the home of the free speech movement, a movement I've recently been thinking about a great deal in a way that brings me back to ideas of community. When I first went to Smith, I was surprised to discover how many private spaces there were on the campus for engaged conversation about issues of current moment. Smith has a house system. The students live in groups of about 100 in family-style houses, and kind of central to house community are meals together, lots of activities together in the living rooms. But the thing that disappointed me about Smith is it had no public space for debate. It had no Sproul Plaza. Berkeley's just the opposite. The megaphone of Sproul Plaza is the icon of free speech, but private space for those engaged, sometimes difficult conversations is sometimes hard to find. This is, of course, not just a Berkeley issue. In many forums, we've lost the ability to have a robust conversation between people with sharply divergent views. I'll be making next year a free speech year, in which we will begin by thinking about our history in regard to free speech and the laws and policies that govern its protections. And I'm going to create lots of opportunities for small groups in the community to come together to talk about these issues. We will seek then to model debate between people with very different views on matters of public importance. Events, of course, are not entirely under our control, and we labor under the misfortune that outside groups see Berkeley as the ideal stage for their issues. But we'll do our best to take back the narrative and provide events in which the community can come together. Thank you for listening to me today, and thank you even more for your engagement and support. I want to hear from you, not just in the questions that I'm about to answer, but send me an email, grab me when you see me at a function. I'm really interested in hearing from the people who love Berkeley and have ideas about how to make it thrive. I tried to tell you a little bit about my journey to and through Cal. I'm eager to hear about your journeys. We share one of the greatest and most significant universities in the world, the California idea, as one writer recently put it, of higher education. We owe it our best intelligence, our best foresight, our best loyalty. That I pledge to you as its 11th Chancellor. Thank you.
So some of you have already submitted questions. I promised in not in modern media style to ask you if you prefer kale or Belgian endive. We'll start with something, but being this audience, they got some heavy-hitting questions here.
Great.
So we thought we'd just dive right in. You've already demonstrated a refreshing and effective communication style. Will you consider expanding that effort by occasionally attending undergraduate classes, student events, and ASUC Senate meetings?
Absolutely. I've already begun attending ASUC Senate meetings in my time as the Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost. I've decided I'm going to have open hours every week in a noisy, talky part of the library. I will definitely go to lots of student events. I really have taken a page from the book of Luncheon when he was chancellor. I think that the campus right now needs a chancellor who's going to use a lot of shoe leather and and just be out and about in lots of different places where people come together. That Berkeley, unlike Smith, it's many communities, and if you want to build community, you have to go to the many neighborhoods in which people find community.
How can we tap the institutional memory of Berkeley, the talent and love of Berkeley, of our retired faculty and staff, for the betterment of Berkeley?
Well, I guess I'm a living example, aren't I? I have a good friend who's telling me I flunked retirement. I call on retired faculty actually pretty constantly, and retired staff, and we have a great Retirement Emeriti Association that is so eager to be of help. And I think your question is really interesting because we want not just the help of our retirees on the challenges we're facing now, but I believe history is one of any institution's profoundest resources. I think it's terrible for any institution to lose to lose knowledge of its history. And to get knowledge of history, you have to talk to people and get that history. So that's part of what I want to know are your stories. What was it like when you were at Berkeley as a student? And what do you think about the trajectory of the institution?
And again, if you have questions, write them down and pass them down to the end of the aisle. We'll collect them and ask more questions. Can Berkeley retain its public character without restoring state funding significantly? Granting the new reality of mixed revenues, isn't state funding still essential, and how can we do that?
Well, I should make sure that you understand that state funding is our most significant revenue source if you strip away the contracts and grants that has a, I've always thought, a somewhat distorting effect on university budgets. So people will often quote the figure to you that only 11% of Berkeley's budget now comes from the state. But if you strip away the contracts and grants, it's significantly more than that. And it still is. That, together with tuition, is still the most significant funding of the faculty, of the classes and programs that we offer for undergraduates and graduate students. But the question is a really important one that I and many leaders in public higher education are asking themselves. I believe the two most important things in relationship, well, there are three things that in relationship to our, in relationship to the state. One is the state not continue to reduce that amount of support. Secondly is that we have a modest but predictable increase in tuition for our students. So we don't, go through, as we have recently, 6 years with no tuition increase, and then, we have a spike. So I think it's better to have a predictable and moderate increase over years. And then finally, we need the policy freedoms to develop streams of revenue that can help us subsidize our state programs.
How are you, or how do you intend to balance admission needs of state students versus other U.S. students and foreign students?
Well, the regents have recently passed a policy that really governs that. So we cannot exceed our current percentage of out-of-state and international students, which is a little bit under 25%. That's the figure that we'd be held to. I myself believe, though this is a somewhat controversial point of view, this is not a controversial point of view, what I'm about to say, is I believe that the greatest public policy challenge that the University of California faces over the next several decades is enrollment capacity. We are, of all the states in the United States, number 50 in the relationship of the percentage of places, public and private, in four-year institutions in relationship to the size of the population. That clearly reflects the enormous investment and confidence that the state of California has put in its community college system. But at a point when it's increasingly believed that a four-year degree is essential for economic security and a good career, we're going to face a shortage in, as the state's population continues to grow and as graduation rates continue to increase for underrepresented minorities, we're going to face a shortage of places in the University of California. And most people care most about those places at Berkeley and UCLA. When I left for Northampton, Massachusetts, Berkeley was about 28,000 students. Now it's 40,000 students. And I expect the pressure is going to continue for us to increase the size of the Berkeley campus. And we have to be thinking about that issue really, really carefully. I believe first and foremost, we need to serve the people of the state of California. That's our mission. But we also, out-of-state and international students contribute importantly to the campus, and they, the tuition that they pay, which is equivalent to the tuition in private colleges and universities, helps subsidize our in-state students.
Can you address, I think this specifically deals with athletics budget deficit, but says the current state of the budget deficit and the strategies you might implement to avoid cutting smaller sports like field hockey and crew. So we're getting into details of athletics. 14 days, she's only been in charge 14 days.
I knew this was waiting for me when I took on this job. There are a number of decisions that I will make this summer about athletics. Let me explain the sequence of the decisions that I'm going to make. First of all, one of the budget, I should say, in athletics is about $22 million annual budget deficit. That's big, and it's currently about a fifth of the campus's budget deficit. That's a mixture. There are a mixture of reasons for this. I mean, this is not uniquely true of athletics, but the campus, because it has had relatively healthy financials until recently, has not adjusted budgets that were in some ways inadequate. So it just kept letting units run deficits or supplementing them at the end of the fiscal year. And the finding of financially sustainable plan for athletics is going to be a combination of expenditure reduction together with a budget adjustment. And what that mixture is the big question that I have to answer. Most immediately, the stadium debt is $18 million a year, which is a lot. The debt service, I'm sorry, not the debt. And I believe the stadium project, as I think most of you know, is a really quite ambitious project. A portion of it was driven by the need to seismically strengthen Memorial Stadium. I believe a good argument exists for taking the seismic portion of that debt onto the campus's books, which in itself would be an adjustment to athletics budget deficit. There also is, I'm sorry, this is getting really down into the weeds and maybe more into the weeds than you want. There's also a really important decision the campus has to make about the prong through which we will meet the requirements of Title IX. There are three prongs by which you can meet those requirements: prong 1, prong 2, and prong 3. Prong 2 is not available to Berkeley, so I won't explain what prong 2 is. Prong 3 is the prong that we currently are in. And that prong stipulates that you have to add a women's sport whenever it meets a set of criteria for sufficient interest. The trouble with prong 3, in my view, is that it commits you to adding sports on a fairly frequent basis with all the attendant capital expenses. The criterion for meeting prong 1 is that you have to have the number of spaces, the proportion of spaces in men's teams and women's teams that's proportional to the number of places, the proportion of men and women in the student body as a whole. That's about, I think, 52-48 women to men currently. If we chose to elect prong 1, it would mean cutting the rosters of men's teams. We have very large rosters currently in our men's teams, and that would be both a way of economizing and a way of shielding us from future expense. I'm going on a listening tour over the summer. I'm meeting with a lot of groups in athletics, groups of athletically interested donors, to get advice on this issue of the prongs. So much depends upon, in your budget plan for athletics, what prong you elect. That's a decision that I will hope to make this summer. Then we have determined that we're going to hire a consultant to come in and tell us whether there are any ways that we could be saving money that we haven't thought of already in athletics. And I'll be appointing a review committee for athletics of the sort we use with our schools and colleges, with some of our other units where we've had substantial deficits in student services, for example. We had about a $20 million deficit at the end of last year's fiscal close. So up there, along with athletics, we had a review committee come in, and we've resolved that deficit. They now have a balanced budget. It required some hard choices, but it was, I think, a really successful exercise. And we're going to do the same kind of thing with athletics. So those are some of the things that I'm planning on doing.
Okay, I've got one or two more, and then we're going to make our way over to the Poly Ballroom. When will your inauguration as the first female chancellor be? It's historic and needs to be celebrated appropriately, and numerous alumni are looking forward to marching with their class banners in traditional alumni procession.
Oh, that's great. That is really great. Well, I was given a choice. Colleen Rivetti, who many of you know, gave me a choice of 3 dates, and I can tell you what the 3 dates are and see if you think I chose the right one. One was homecoming. A second was when the students graduating in December have their graduation in Haas Pavilion. And the third was to do a big celebration in March of 2018 of the 150th anniversary of Cal. I chose the second, doing it with the December graduation, because I thought it'd be great to have a lot of students there and be celebrating them. So probably in the beginning of December.
Great. So you said in the beginning of our questions that you've flunked retirement. And so you're starting this job when most of this audience is well retired. So I just wanted to ask you, what will you do to keep your energy up, and what do you do and to keep the day-to-day grind, keep it in perspective?
That's a great question. I walk every morning. I get up really early and I walk around the track that's close to my home. And I'm a serious amateur musician, and I try to practice the viola and the piano every day. I love to read. And every day I look for a moment of Zen.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I think you can tell that Chancellor Christ is well qualified and well ready to take on this responsibility. I said to someone earlier, she's been on campus long enough that she knows where all the skeletons in the closets are. So she certainly. So I want to thank you for your address and for answering these questions. She's going to join us for lunch. We have more of a program over at lunch, and she's going to make some time to make some rounds around the table. So thank you, and we'll see you over in Poly Ballroom.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.